I think New England at home is going to be able to get the better of the Texans when it comes to just the matchup of the Patriots defense versus the Texans offense. And that's exactly what happened. I'm like, Woody Marks is not going to lead all running backs as far as total rush yards this year, even though he did have a rushing touchdown this one. I'm like, Charlie Kirk is not going to go off and have another huge game, go for 8 catches and 144 yards, because we have someone named Christian Gonzalez and then also Carlton Davis, who had some of the most ridiculous interceptions in this game. This might be the best game I've ever seen from Carlton Davis. He had some legendary games with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers where he came up big, but this game, he was kind of the MVP for the Patriots on defense. And then Milton Williams playing excellent again, where CJ Stroud just looked absolutely lost. And then people were trying to rush to his defense at halftime. Well, it's not really CJ Stroud's fault in this game. And I get they didn't have Nico Collins in this game, but it's not like the Patriots have the best receivers on their side either.
No, absolutely. CJ Stroud, I did feel bad for it at one point in the game. He was missing wide open throws. The climate was really rough. They were in snowy weather. That didn't help, but he also threw some really bad balls, and he threw 4 picks in this game, all in the first half. I counted at least 5 other passes that could have very easily been intercepted. At one point, I debated whether they should be starting Davis Mills at that point into the second half, because he just looked lost. He looked scared. He looked petrified at one point. And part of it was sad. I mean, he completed 40% of his passes. He was missing wide open throws. And CJ Stroud maybe isn't a top 10 quarterback in the league, but he's a good quarterback. He's a franchise guy. You're happy to have him. And the way that he performed this game was just abysmal. I think a lot of this goes out to the Patriots defense, though. And Carlton Davis, you shouted him out. He played excellent. 2 interceptions. Marcus Jones with the pick 6 in this game as well, who also had a great game. Some big kick returns there as well. But just CJ Stroud missing wide open throws, playing horribly. I hope he can shake it off, but this is one of the worst games I've seen from CJ Stroud by far.
It's not only the worst game you've seen from CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud literally had the worst postseason run of any quarterback in history. He's the only quarterback to finish a single postseason with 5 interceptions and 5 fumbles, and he only played 2 games. And one of those was versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's the only quarterback to do it. So he literally had the worst postseason of all time, where this guy in his rookie year, people were saying he's a top 5 quarterback. I bought into the hype as well, and he looked really good when he was running those crossing routes with Tank Dell and Nico Collins. They're really lighting it up. And then he had a couple years where, you have the offensive line and they struggled. And now he literally has the worst run ever, and he just saved the Texans $100 million, because now the Texans have every right not to give this guy a $200 million contract. This guy will be lucky if he gets over $150 million, or if the Texans even decide to go forward with him, because now if you're DeMeco Ryans, you're in a really tough spot where you've gotten to the playoffs every single year that you've been with the Texans. You only had 2 players on that defense that were on the team before you got there, and then you now had the number 1 ranked defense, and your defense honestly played pretty well. If you take away that pick 6 from CJ Stroud, it would have been probably a manageable game. And I don't know, if you take away the 5 turnovers in this game, it definitely would have been a manageable one. And then Drake May goes out there and he's the first quarterback to throw 3 touchdowns against this team, but their defense was still giving them troubles. Will Anderson knocked the ball out of Drake May's hand 3 times in this one. Danielle Hunter was still a monster in this one. So the defense wasn't a problem. So now if you're the Texans, you are the only team in the NFL that hasn't been to a conference championship. You have not won a divisional round game, so you're essentially the Marvin Lewis of the divisional round as far as an NFL franchise. So now if you look at it, is it going to be DeMeco Ryans? Do you have to take a look at potentially trading up in the draft and possibly trading CJ Stroud this offseason, see if another team kind of take phone calls and see who's interested and wants to pay him? Because when they beat Buffalo on Thursday Night Football, it was with Davis Mills starting.
I think there's a lot of things you consider. For CJ Stroud, I think he's a solid enough quarterback that moving forward, maybe you give it 1 more year with him. But I also see a scenario where maybe they do call the Arizona Cardinals and they say, hey, you take CJ, we take Kyler Murray, you eat some of the contract, we take Kyler Murray for maybe a cheaper deal. I think Kyler Murray with them, when you have Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Jaden Higgins, Dalton Schultz, that could be interesting. That would make their offense a little more dynamic, make their running game a little bit better. I would make a call and see if that's available for them. Maybe it is drafting his replacement. Are they going to pick up his fifth-year option? I don't know if you want to. I mean, you're going to have to pay him $30 million if you do that. Is he worth it? So far, I think, in those other two playoff games, I think he played fine the last two playoff runs that they've had. But if you can't win in the divisional round and not make the conference championship, like, how long can you stick around with this guy? He's young. I think there's definitely a market for CJ. I call the Arizona Cardinals and I say, hey, what do you want for Kyler Murray? We'll give you CJ Stroud and a third round pick. Eat some of the contract. And I would make that trade today, 100%.
Or the Texans, a team, yeah, because if you're looking to move on from CJ Stroud and you have the defense intact right now, Danielle Hunter's in his 30s, so he's going to be in his prime for a couple more years. You want to have a manageable cap situation where you can potentially think about drafting a quarterback and developing someone. Are you a team that calls Aaron Rodgers next year and says, hey, we just need someone who won't turn the ball over and literally have the worst postseason run in NFL history with 5 fumbles and 5 interceptions? Because one thing about Aaron Rodgers is, like, sure, he had the pick six and he had the fumble in that game, but the Steelers' offense really just isn't that great. But I think if you had a healthy Aaron Rodgers in Houston, Davis Mills as his backup, and you potentially draft a quarterback you think can be your future, but one thing is you can't pay CJ Stroud. So is that a conversation you have?
Absolutely. I would call up Aaron Rodgers. He's not going to turn the ball over. He's a veteran. He can shake it off. He's had playoff success. I would absolutely call it Aaron Rodgers. Try to trade CJ Stroud. I'm sure the Vikings would love to have CJ Stroud as well. So I think it's the conversation you look at this offseason. Nick Caserio and that team for the GM, see if there's a move that they can make. Aaron Rodgers would be a fine fit if he wants to keep playing and the Steelers don't want to bring him back. Why not? Is absolutely a championship defense. They gave the Patriots a bunch of trouble. You take out those even if they have half of those turnovers, this could very well have been a Texans win that we're looking at instead of a loss, very easily.
Yeah, because it's one of those situations where now you put more pressure on Drake May and he has to think about it a little bit more. And then some of the the playbook definitely gets a lot tighter. And then you put the Patriots in a tougher situation in that game. But for a team in the Texans that was pretty much the unanimous favorite by everyone coming into this game, like it was like 3-1 on the panel picking the Houston Texans before this game. You had everyone on ESPN's pre-show on Friday pick the Texans. And because we didn't think CJ Stroud is actually that bad, but CJ Stroud has kind of been trying to tell us who he is the past 2 NFL seasons. In that rookie season, seems like it really got into his head where there's just something wrong with his game right now, where anytime he's under pressure, he panics and he makes bad throws. Like the perfect example is the pick six that he had. And now the Houston Texans are a young franchise, but the fact that this team has never made it to a conference championship is a little bit ridiculous. And the fact that you had the narrative, well, the Patriots, they haven't beat, a team with a winning record except for the Buffalo Bills. That's an outlier because it's like a divisional game. Well, they beat the Chargers. The Chargers are historically cursed. Justin Herbert sucks. He didn't have an offensive line. We give him a pass there. But now they go out there and they don't just beat the Texans. Their defense bullies the Texans offense and has a historic output where now they have the most pass defenses of any team since the 2004 Philadelphia Eagles, who I believe made the Super Bowl and lost to the Patriots that year.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, that Patriots defense is no joke. Christian Gonzalez is probably the best corner in the NFL. Bob Spillane made some big plays there. Marcus Jones, historic game for him. He played incredible. He had multiple huge punt returns for them. He played incredible. So, I mean, this defense is no joke. They invested all this money in them in the offseason, $240 million. And it seems like every single person they signed was a hit. Carlton Davis had 2 picks in this game. Bob Spillane made some big tackles for a loss. Christian Gonzalez shut down their best player. So, absolutely, this defense is a wagon. I think that this team can give a lot of trouble to the Denver Broncos next week. and then whoever they face potentially in the Super Bowl also. I think this Patriots defense is a championship winning defense, 100%.
Yeah, and really the only issue with this team has been Drake May's fumbles, but I feel like we have to give a lot of credit to Mike Vrabel because it seems like people are already trying to spin the narrative and make excuses like, oh, well, the Patriots have a cupcake walk to the Super Bowl now because now they're going to play the Broncos without Stidham, and then they're potentially going to play Sam Darnold in the Super Bowl, or they're going to play Matt Stafford. But now they're already spinning the narrative. It went from the Patriots haven't beat a winning record. Look at the strength of schedule to, oh, well, they beat the Chargers without their offensive line. They just beat the Texans, and CJ Stroud had the worst postseason in history. But this was a team where everyone picked the Texans in this game. But we have to give a lot of credit to just Mike Vrabel out coaching Jim Harbaugh, out coaching D'Amico Ryans in this game. And he has been the one that's been the real factor that's turned this team around. When you have the right quarterback and the right coach, the Patriots aren't the most talented team on offense, but they know exactly what they need to do. And then Drake May is someone who already understands that sometimes winning is boring. It doesn't need to be a flashy play. You don't need to go out there and try and do too much and then force a play downfield. He still had some fumble issues in this game, but Drake May is fine just taking whatever the defense is going to give him. He didn't force too many passes in this game, and then the throw he had to Booty was ridiculous. The touchdown to Stephon Diggs, and then as soon as he had that 4th-and-1 conversion to Demario Douglas where he just ran wide open into the end zone, I'm like, okay, this is going to be a real good game because I picked the Patriots to win this game, but I didn't feel good about it at all. And the fact that this game was just a complete domination from front to, I mean, last week you had Chargers players coming up to Bob Spillane saying, we don't know what you're doing on defense and we couldn't figure it out during the game. Like, how do you think CJ Stroud with his low IQ test in the combine is going to do against the Patriots defense?
Yeah. No, it was incredible. And Drake May, like, I think Drake May overall had a good game. He made some big throws when it mattered. That defense, that coverage that they have, Mike Vrabel, who's won multiple Super Bowls as a player, he could become the first uh, player to coach the same team he won Super Bowls with ever. So he could be potentially be the first guy to coach the team that won the Super Bowl with. So I think that's going to be big. But Patriots are a wagon. I think a lot of the people who hate the Patriots right now, they have all the fuel they want. They beat the Chargers without an offensive line. They beat the Texans without Nico Collins, and now they're going to face Jared Stidham in the AFC title game.